Hello friends, welcome to this video, welcome to my studio. Today I wanted to chat to you about colour and comfort zones because these are the things that I have been thinking about in my own art practice this week, and in these videos I always try and share my creative thoughts, what I'm doing in my own art making, in case it's helpful for you in your creative and artistic endeavours. So Matisse said that the main function of colour in art is to serve expression. So colour is expressive. He also said that there was an energy about colour that was similar to witchcraft, and I have to agree with him. So recently I've been really yearning for colour and playing about with colour and leaning into experimenting with colour and really concentrating on how colours react when they meet other colours. That moment of relationship between one colour and its neighbour. The fascinating thing about colour is it's all relational. It's how one colour looks in relationship to another colour. So it means there's just infinite stuff to explore and learn and enjoy. And I think mixing colours and coming up with colour combinations really can feel a little bit magical. It does feel bewitching and joyful. And like it's an antidote to greyness and difficulty, for me, colour can feel really restorative. So in a previous video, I showed you what I was up to. I'd been doing some drawings of things in my home. I'd photocopied the drawings, turned them into collages. Then I did some simple studies like this from the drawings, so some painted studies in a really limited colour palette. And now I've been really wanting to use this idea, use this starting point as a way to explore colour, and I flipping love colour. I would say colour is one of the most exciting, beguiling, challenging, interesting parts of art making for me. I feel like exploring colour will be my lifelong pursuit because there are just infinite possibilities, infinite things to explore. I think I could be exploring colour for the rest of my life and only have scratched the surface of things that I want to know about colour. I have been trying to gently move myself out of my comfort zone with colour. So one of the interesting things about being an artist is that we have, we might have years of experience, years of things we've learned, years of things we know that we like and that we love. And that can feel very cosy and comfortable and reassuring. And that is important, but I also like to inject a little bit of surprise, a little bit of difference, a little bit of delight. So sometimes that means I've got to sort of push myself, force myself out of my comfort zone and maybe use colours that don't feel innate, use colours that feel a little bit awkward, a bit different, and just see where it takes me. I really enjoy the challenge of problem solving, and so I often will give myself a colour challenge or experiment to see if I can paint my way out of it. And so this is what I have been doing. I've been really trying to spend more time painting, carve out more time for painting and colour. So I've been doing these sort of colour experiments where I'm introducing colours that I might not typically use, so a burgundy or an orange or a yellow, and then really trying to notice what I'm enjoying and those little moments and passages and colour combinations and colour relationships that feel interesting and exciting. The way I've started this particular set of experiments is to paint on a really large A1 piece of paper, using colours that I might not usually use, exploring marks and different ways to apply the colour so that I've got a sort of base layer of interest and richness and texture and colour, and I have torn it into 4 fairly equal pieces. So this is the sort of thing that I am starting with, like a cacophony of colour and marks. And in painting this page, I was really trying to perhaps use colours that I don't usually use. So maybe a peach colour, mint green, something that I wouldn't instinctively reach for. You know, I've still used lovely blues that I'd go for, maybe a little bit of pink that is the natural playground for me in colour. But I've also added in some, for me, unusual colours. So this then becomes my starting point for a new painting. And then this is a page where I've added a little bit. So I've added in a sort of green cup shape. I've put a smear of a greeny blue colour there. So I've added a little bit more paint, but I've left in some of these sort of, you know, lavender colours and some of the mint greens, some of the things that I don't instinctively reach for in terms of colour. And that's another painting that is in the beginning stages. And then here are two that I finished that started the same way as those examples I've just shown you. I've added in colours that are natural and instinctive to me, but I've also got colours in here that I might not use, sort of the peaches and the oranges. And so it's really just a small encouragement to myself and perhaps to you to play with colour and be experimental with colour. I'm working on these with the intention that they are painted studies. I'm not aiming for finished paintings necessarily, although often when I bring a sort of experimental spirit, I'm being playful, there might be something that I really love, but the end game, the intention is not to have a beautifully finished painting. The end game and intention is to be adventurous, inventive, braver, bolder with colour, and kind of giving myself a bit of a talking to. Don't stay in the nice cozy comfort zone. Use a colour that you don't use. Combine a colour that you are not sure will necessarily work and see where it takes you. Enjoy the adventure of playing around with paint and nudging yourself out of what you know to be true and what you know you like. Add in something a bit exciting, add in something a bit different and see what happens. That is my kind of philosophy and artistic mantra this week. So I also just wanted to show you this sketchbook of mine that I think I've shown you before, and I sort of have this dedicated sketchbook just for messing around with colour, smearing blobs of colour together. And when I started in this sketchbook, I wrote some notes to myself to remind myself that this book is just about exploring colour relationships, colour combinations, colour conversations, colour fascinations and colour explorations. So I just have got pages of different colour combinations, and I write little notes to myself, sometimes about the colours that I like. I really love a warm grey and a neon, so maybe taking some notes about the combinations that I'm enjoying and that are exciting me, and some notes to also be perhaps adventurous and bolder and braver and more experimental with colour. So I've put here things like seek excitement and enchantment in my colour combinations. Excitement and enchantment, that sounds like a nice thing, doesn't it? And I've also put here create unexpected and delightful colour combinations in relationships. And then just messed around with different colours on the page, seeing if I can create a page that I find interesting and surprising and delightful from a colour point of view, and maybe encouraging myself to use colours that I wouldn't normally put together. And I find a sort of colour sketchbook a really playful and inviting place to mess around with colour. So that's what I'm up to this week, and maybe that's what you might like to do this week too, is to challenge yourself to use colours that you don't normally use. So put together a page of smears of colour and see if you can discover something about how colours work in relationship. See if you can find your own set of colours that you find exciting and seductive and enchanting. I'm wanting to create combinations that I may not naturally and instinctively go for. There are some things that I'm just really loving about what I'm finding out, and that's exciting, isn't it? And I think we have to, as artists, be able to excite and surprise ourselves, because I think that excitement and that surprise and that delight then comes out in the painting, and it makes for a more interesting painting. What I'm doing in my studio this week is I'm mixing a colour I've never mixed before. I'm combining a colour that I perhaps haven't used for a long time. I'm seeking interesting relationships. I'm giving myself a starting point. I'm painting on a page that has unusual, varied colours that I might not normally start with. I'm just giving myself little, small colour challenges to see what I can find out. And it's been a little bit uncomfortable, but also a lot exciting. So that brings us to the end of this video. So I hope this video has perhaps encouraged you to have a little fun with weird and wonderful colours this week as well.